Alright, now we have a rough sketch all pretty much done. Let's go ahead and start lining. So, if you have your little trusty 005 pen, let's get started. So, let's zoom in so you guys can see what I'm going to be doing, and just in general, I'm just going to be tracing everything as usual. So I'm going to be going very carefully once again this time, because this piece is a little bit more delicate, especially when it comes to watercolor. The line work is a lot more delicate, especially if you want that like very airy, which I'm going for, if you want the airy kind of prairie-like look. So I'm just tracing these very delicately, still, making sure that my lines are controlled, that I'm not making hairy lines. In fact, what I should have done, well, actually it's light enough to do it anyway. What I should have done was I should have erased some, just to make it even easier to erase or like look at my line work. But it's fine. I got a little bit too excited because I'm really liking this piece so far, so. So in this case, I would like kind of pressure myself sometimes to like go a little bit more careful. So sometimes if I make a mistake, especially on a piece like this, I will try my best to not do that. In fact, I'll try my best to even hide that mistake if I could. But, if you make a mistake still, well, it doesn't really matter. I know I keep saying that, but it really doesn't. Especially if you're still practicing, expect to make mistakes along the way, especially in traditional. Traditional is so much more risky to make mistakes because you can't undo. You just have to you just have to have the right preparation. So as you can see, very, very fine, but controlled lines. I would speed this up, but I like, kind of taking my time. And I know that you guys also like when I do things in real time because it shows the whole entire process. Now, of course, if you want to skip ahead, go ahead and do that. I'm not judging because this takes a long time. And I know that my videos can get quite long, but this is actually my shortest course in terms of, drawing anime. Well, actually, my costume drawing course or my clothes drawing course is actually really short compared to all my other ones now. But these videos are actually a lot shorter in terms of minutes wise. So now instead of like an hour, it's about 20 minutes. So I'm pretty sure you guys who don't have all the time to look at my videos are going to be pretty glad about that. Of course, if you want to reinforce some of the lines, go ahead and do that. Just go and take your time. Just take it slow. Of course, if you have anything distracting you, or kind of like if you accidentally bump something, remove those items because this is concentration time. If you have a steady hand, it's a lot easier to do line work like this, especially on a bigger scale. In fact, bigger line works, like bigger pieces about almost the size of my hand, it's actually easier to line because your strokes are a lot bigger. So therefore, that gives you a little bit of a better rotation. You can rotate your paper, and you can even rotate and get a better edge at it. So, and that can also be done digitally as well. You can also rotate your canvas to help you. There. Notice how I'm not lining every single thing around the mouth because the teeth are kind of more subtle. I don't want to make a big bold line there. So now I'm going to draw the eyebrows. So far so good. And now I'm going to be lining the insides here. Everything is all, the reason why I'm, showing you this way of line work is because it's actually a lot easier. You don't have to focus on line weight all that much because you're only doing one pen here right now. And because, this is a very like mono kind of textured pen, it's not like a brush pen where it's like, different textures or different weights. This is all the same weight, so it's easier to line with these kind of pens because they're all a uniform shape. You can always overlap different kinds of line weights on top anyway. And of course, try to make sure that your pen is, nice and well inked because it'd be kind of annoying to have to go buy another one. I should have bought another 005 because it feels like it's getting a little bit weak after using this so much. Now when it comes to the eyes here, I'm going to use a darker pen, so I'm going to use a 01. It's a little bit thicker than my 05, but I'm just going to go ahead and trace in the eyes here. I'm going to be doing a bit of a textured kind of hatching here because I want to, add some color in here later on. So by adding some texture, you can still see a little bit of color and not just have it just pitch black. And this also gives it that nice airy look. So as you can see, it's not super dense. It's just a little bit hatched. So the same thing on the other side. As you can see, pretty straightforward process. This hatching also helps definitely a lot with adding some more color in your pieces because if you want to add color to like your eyelashes, for example, or your eye lines, you don't have to color it pitch black. You can basically just, hatch it a little bit. Whoa, that's a little bit thick. Be sure not to do that. So take your 005 again and line in your eyelids here. Now what I would do is I would basically just trace these with a colored pen. However, I'm going to have to test out to see if this pen can take watercolor. So I'm going to go ahead and just draw a little bit of my lines here. Wait for that to dry, and in a little bit I'll show you guys if my gel pens can withstand water. So now I'm going to line in the flower. So how long am I in? I'm only 8 minutes in, which is not too bad. So I'm going to trace in this flower. Notice how my petals overlap over each other. And because of that overlap, it gives more dimension into my drawings. There, rose is done. Now let's give her that braid in the center. If you want to draw more simple braids, just kind of draw in some rounded diamond shapes. You can also draw a little bit of a center line in there as well. Let's draw in the ends. There. So that's at the end there. 10 minutes in, not too bad. Now let's draw in the hind and the strands from behind the hair. And this is so far what we have. So I think this pen has dried out a little bit. So I'm gonna take my brush pen, I'm gonna push a little bit of water out. So since I don't have water with me, I'm just gonna use a little bit of my water. And I don't know what's going on. My brush pen's not working. Let's try another one. Let me go fill up water real quick and I will be right back. Okay, so I know that my microns are smudge free because you saw my previous tutorial on watercolor, but now I'm going to be testing it on this gel pen, this cheap gel pen that I got at Target. Yeah, I am not going to use this because, as you can see, it's really smudgy. I would use this for color pencils, and honestly, I would, probably use this as a little bit of an inking pen, but this looks a little bit, I guess I could use it, but if I'm going to color skin over this, I don't want my blue going over. So I'm just going to be lining these eyes with my very thin pen, very, very quickly, by the way, so it looks a little bit lighter. So it almost looks like there's a very fine line. So I'm just going to be lining these very thinly. If you want a thinner line, go a little bit quicker. There. All good. I would use actually a sepia colored pen for these watercolor pieces because sepia looks really, really good with like different colors and stuff. But black will do for now. So notice that I'm not moving my wrist like this. I'm moving my arm, that my arm kind of guides where my lines are going to go. So rather than, doing this where it's a very, very short range, I'm basically leading my arm downward. So, and for shorter strokes, I would go and use my wrist. This is starting to run out on me. So I'm going to go a little bit slower and use smaller strokes. Now I'm lining in a little bit of my trapezius and my clavicle. So I'm just going to be indicating that really lightly. And then darkening the edges around the trapezius because that's a pretty bold line there. So far so good. I'll try not to go on too long. I don't know how long this pen will last me. I'll stop the video until basically this pen is going to die on me because this is this is starting to get a little bit worn out. Unfortunately, these micro pens don't last very long, especially when you use them a lot, especially on textured paper where the ink doesn't flow as well. So unfortunately, we're going to have to get another one. But, good quality products, I still would get them anyway. So I'll try to use the most out of this. So I'm going to add a little bit more on the hair. Make sure that it connects. If you're drawing two separate lines, make sure that you're aiming correctly. And notice that I'm, rather than drawing multiple lines like this, to make one line, I'm using it all in one stroke. And that will give you the ultimate kind of smooth line work. And that just takes time, by the way. This is not an overnight thing. The more you practice line work, the better your line quality will be, and the better you can control your hand. So here's the other arm. So I'm kind of lining out of order, but sometimes that just makes it interesting, doesn't it? So I have the elbow, and then have the forearm going towards us. Like so. It almost looks like a round cylinder. So using these form lines show more three-dimensional, should give this piece a little bit more of a three-dimensional feel. I'm actually going to use a number 1 now, or 01, because this is starting to get a little bit light on me. So I'm going to use this as a substitute for now to put in some darker lines. So if I want to go a little bit thinner, I can just draw lighter. So we have the thumb. Here is the index finger. A little bit of our nail. And then here we have her middle finger. Which is going to be a little bit thicker. And then we have her ring finger. And last but not least, we have our pinky, which is a little bit lifted. And that little lifted pinky kind of gives a fanned out look like this. There. So that is our first hand, which looks really, really nice, actually. So, I'm actually pretty happy with that hand. Anyways, so now let's do the other side of her arm. So let's draw in her arm this way. Let's turn the paper just so we can get a better look. So we have our index finger kind of bending in. We have our middle finger a little bit thicker. And then we have our fourth finger kind of bending inward. I kind of made a little mistake there. Oh well. And then we have her pinky, which we can either stick out, or I think I'll just leave it in. There. Oh, darn, I messed up on that fourth finger. See that? I knew that would happen. I knew it. That was intentional. Kidding. Oh well, it's fine. We have our thumb. We can just kind of indicate it on the other side. I'm not gonna, line in any of these areas here yet because I want to just first get that situated with the arm situation here. Now I'm gonna go a little bit careful now because this is a long route. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to rotate this to the point where it's easier for me. And then I'm going to just drag my arm and it meets that point. So as you can see, by rotating and finding an easier angle, you can, basically just line any kind of line at this point. So let me just actually line a little bit of leaves here. There. Now let's see the other side. Oh, that might have been drawn a little bit thick. Oh, well, that's fine. I can always just kind of fake that as a leaf or something. So because we're on that number 101 line now, let's go ahead and just line the rest of these areas here just a little bit darker so we can see this better. So I like lining areas like the top of the bangs and kind of just thin them down a little bit. That gives a better line quality there. So here's the pectoralis. And I will actually just stop here for now. So this is what we have when it comes to the line work. A very, very simple process, it just takes some time. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.